Okay, so this isn't going to be as long a review as the last one was, because frankly, as great as this episode was as well, it's not as complex an episode as the previous episode was. That said, in many of my previous videos criticizing the Rose Diamond reveal, I pointed out that I had two major issues with it. That if the aftermath of it wasn't handled properly, it would detract from the characterization of Pearl, and also heap a much larger burden on the shoulders of Steven, who at this point, frankly, has been dealing with that kind of stuff for long enough already. And just as I had hoped would happen, the previous episode dealt with the first of those things, and this episode dealt with the second. Sapphire reads Ruby's letter, the one that she found left for her at the end of the previous episode, and discovers that Ruby has run away, though she doesn't say where to. Sapphire breaks down because she doesn't have Ruby. Pearl breaks down because she doesn't have Garnet, and so Steven takes it upon himself to find Ruby and bring her home. Amethyst, though, seems very dismissive of all of this. She seems much more concerned with relaxing and playing a video game, and even invites Steven to join her. But when he insists that he has to go find Ruby, she goes with him. And yet, despite the fact that she went with him throughout their search, she seems to be trying to distract him with her trademark sense of humor, to the point that Steven finally asks her to stop, though he does so quite politely, pointing out that he does enjoy her sense of humor, it's just that this isn't the time for it. However, she does convince him to stop and get lunch, and gets lunch with him, and she asks him how he's handling all of this. Steven is obviously surprised, because this isn't the kind of thing that Amethyst does, and she does eventually break down, spouting a bunch of her feelings, inspiring Steven to shift gears and try to talk things out with her. They have a solid lead on where Ruby is, and Steven still wants to go look for her, but now that he realizes that Amethyst is taking this whole thing much harder than she seemed to be, he's trying to help her through it, and she doesn't want him to. She realizes that in the past, she and the other crystal gems have piled a lot on his shoulders and allowed him to take responsibility for things that aren't his fault. Yes, she definitely needs to work through some stuff, and the end of the episode does suggest that now that he knows that she isn't trying to burden him with her problems, she is willing to talk to him about things. But that's exactly what it is. She doesn't want to burden him with her problems. She doesn't want to make him feel like her problems are also his. She wants to stop looking to and dwelling upon the past and instead look towards the future, a brighter future. Once again, Steven is pretty stunned by how maturely she's behaving, and even points out that at this point, she seems like she might be the most mature crystal gem. Her reaction to which is absolutely priceless. And in fact, priceless is a very apt way to describe this episode. It had a ton of really adorable Amethyst and Steven moments in an entire series full of great Amethyst and Steven moments. Not only that, but the writing in this episode is super self-aware. It's clearly written to subvert the tropes that are common to this series. I think that this is honestly one of the best written episodes that we've gotten in a very long time. The interpersonal stuff in this episode was just It was fantastic. Amethyst's behavior in this felt out of character throughout the entire thing. At the beginning, she seemed too dismissive, but only because we expect more from her at this point in her development. And then later, when she starts acting so responsibly, that feels out of character too, because for a long time, she wasn't a responsible person, but then you take a step back and realize she's grown beyond that, and you realize this does fit her characterization perfectly. But I think honestly the most important part of this episode was that Steven needed to hear all of this. You can tell when Amethyst tells him that his mother's baggage isn't his problem, that while he is going to treat it as such, at least in a limited way, in order to help his friends, that's something he'd never really considered before. And it is so important that he seems to understand that now. This episode was framed as a turning point for these two principal characters, and as consistently great as the writing has been on this and the couple of previous episodes, I do expect it to actually be the turning point that it seems to be. This is a new era of characterization for both of these characters, and I would argue probably for Pearl as well. And I'm predicting ahead of time that once we see Ruby again, and later once she's reunited with Sapphire, it will be a turning point for the characterization of both of them, and for Garnet as well. Not to mention that the humor in this episode was really good. It wasn't anything too overt or over the top, but it was definitely welcome. It was a nice palate cleanser after two very serious, very heavy episodes. But as per usual, guys, I'd like to know, what did you think of this episode if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comments section, down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.